Welcome to the Movie Vault. I'm Ben.
And I'm Zach.
And today, we have a very special guest with us. It's not often that we have a professional with us. Maybe one other time can we say that we had a professional who is actually in the industry or adjacent to the industry of filmmaking. And so I'd like to introduce Professor Jonathan Johnson, who's a photographer, filmmaker, and the departmental chair of art and associate professor of photography at Otterbein University. Professor Johnson has a decorated background in academia, receiving his Bachelor of Arts in photojournalism from the University of Alaska Fairbanks while also competing on the Nordic ski team.
Oh, wow.
He received a Master of Arts from Minnesota State University Mankato and completed his Masters of Fine Art in Photography Intermedia from the University of Iowa, completing a thesis titled 20 Seconds into the Future. Professor Johnson works regularly in Thailand, and his work has been displayed in galleries and film festivals worldwide. On top of his busy schedule, Professor Johnson also finds time to teach a general education class in the Arts Integrative Studies thread at Otterbein, titled Contemporary Thai Cinema, which I had the privilege of taking. So that's how I know Professor Johnson. And so a warm welcome to you, Professor Johnson. Welcome to the Movie Vault.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Nordic skiing.
Yes.
Wow. I gotta
that
ask.
Was the one thing when I looked at your bio, I was like, oh, I didn't know that you did that.
Okay. Yeah.
So what makes skiing Nordic?
So Nordic skiing technically is what we think of as cross country.
Okay.
But also ski jumping. Have you seen this? Jumping?
I think,
yeah.
They have this in the Winter Olympics?
Oh, yeah. They're both Olympic sports. And then biathlon, so where you have a rifle, and you've seen this. This is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So pretty much all endurance sports, aside from the jumping. But there's also an event called the Nordic Combined, where you jump first, and then you have a handicap based on the distance of your jump with your start time for the the cross-country ski race part of it, if that makes sense. That happens the next day.
Okay.
So it's kind of wild. So, and of course, originating in the Nordic countries, so, Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, sort of, and yeah.
So you did this in Alaska?
I did. So I'm originally from St. Paul, Minnesota.
Okay.
With a long heritage of Scandinavian immigrants, and so hockey, skiing, that sort of thing is really a part of the culture. A lot of lakes. So anyway, so that was one of the sports in addition to soccer and tennis that I was interested in. But so then that gave me some direction for college, because academically I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but I thought adventure, snow skiing, those are some things that I did know. So that brought me to Alaska, and I really enjoyed it, and I stayed up there for a year working in radio and broadcast, actually, because my background was in journalism. The degree was in journalism. So
so we've brought you back to your roots in a way.
So I'm trying to remember the mics and the names of the different cables and things that we have in front of us.
That's probably more than either of us know about what we're doing here. Yeah. That is interesting, and being a distance runner, I feel like maybe they're sort of like cousin sports. And I did steeplechase, which is sort of like with the jumping in the middle of the endurance is kind of maybe the equivalent in the running world to Nordic skiing. But that's cool. It's mostly teams, like you compete against other colleges. Was it mostly Alaskan teams?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No. So there was another Alaskan university in Anchorage, and then it's schools like University of Colorado, University of Utah, so the western
side,
some Midwestern states, and then you go all the way up to, Massachusetts schools and upstate New York, Maine, those, regions. But they're also actually University of Nevada and New Mexico, because of the elevation, they actually had teams as well. So
a lot of travel.
Lots of travel, lots of long trips, long flights, because obviously Alaska quite a
yeah, you're pretty isolated up there.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I want, maybe I should get it out of the way. What is your favorite movie?
Favorite movie?
That was the only question I had on mine.
That's so tough. Apocalypse Now is a film that Yeah, I would call that one of my favorites. Yeah. Okay. And being like, so my filmmaking experience is like avant-garde and experimental in terms of the things I make. So a lot of it is, abstraction or trying to relate, states of being in a metaphorical way, a textural way, an abstract way, or an experimental way to show the human experience more closely to how we might internally experience things. If that so there's aspects of Apocalypse Now that I think they try to take the horror of warfare, combat, the political dimension of the Vietnam War, and try to do something with it, kind of amplify it, explode it as a way to get closer to what it may have been like. So that's one connection I think I make between that avant-garde, that experimental emotive aspect to Apocalypse Now. Plus Vangelis, the composer, like, who also did Blade Runner, is phenomenal. Like how he could just tap in to that Heart of Darkness, that feeling, that sensation in that film too. I mean, just great. Yeah. So
yeah, we love that movie here as well.
Yeah, we went through a phase where we watched all the Vietnam movies, war movies together. I think we reviewed. Yes. We definitely reviewed Platoon. I don't think we reviewed Apocalypse Now, but we reviewed
the Deer Hunter.
The Deer Hunter. The Deer Hunter.
I listened to that one. That was a good. That was a good one.
Yeah, that's one of both of our favorite movies. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should say that Professor Johnson has actually listened to some of our episodes, which is great.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
we appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoy it.
Do you have a favorite one? Is this too much to ask?
I like the Deer Hunter one because I was listening. I was like, where's this going to go, and how comfortable are they talking about it being a generational thing or near historical thing? And I thought you did a great job.
Thank you.
Banter, the background knowledge, and. Yeah, and it's in some ways it's a weird movie. There's some strange things about it that make it lasting.
Yeah, the pacing
a
definitely
cult, kind of almost a cult.
Yeah.
I think that's how the cult film thing works. Like the first time I saw Big Lebowski, which is another one of my favorite films, I was like, oh, that's a little awkward. That's a lot of that swear word. And then over time, it becomes the texture of the movie that makes it what it is in a lasting way.
I experienced that with the Big Lebowski, actually. The second time I watched it was this past December with my friends, and like everything, I saw some of them watching it the first time and they were so focused on like what is happening, and then it's almost like you have to watch it a second time to realize what the movie is actually about. And it's that's always a cool experience, especially when a filmmaker is able to make something where it's like you have to watch it 2 or 3 times to actually understand what the point of the movie is, and that it may not be like a mystery like it's set up. It's like the whole movie is sort of they're pulling rugs out from under you the whole time. But yeah, I definitely understand that experience. So what led you from like your background in radio into like photo and filmmaking?
So I was a film studies minor and always had dreams of film, and was a big Quentin Tarantino, like fan. Well, like Pulp Fiction came out. I'm going to date myself when I was, right after high school, I think. And that kind of blew things open. And Richard Rodriguez is a filmmaker he did the Spy Kids movies. Have you heard of these?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But he made this movie for $7,000. He gave blood to raise, went to a clinic.
Oh, and he like donated?
Yes, and that's how he raised money.
Oh.
He met a guy that looked like James Spader, also giving blood, and then asked him to be the star of his movie, like at the clinic, But he just had a passion, and he wrote a book called Rebel Without a Crew. Anyway, so that was part of my ontology in, high school, right, early college, that like you could do this. Like there's this indie film movement. So I just became fascinated with that. And then, I had a background in photography and photojournalism, so it's definitely a cognate, technically and historically a lot of similar things happening. And then coming into academia, and especially Otterbein, the cool thing about a university like this is that they'll encourage you to develop different threads of interest for teaching or your own work, your own creative work or your own research. So I had some of that support, and that's where they kind of developed the contemporary Thai cinema course out of, that support. There's a whole history of like how that course came to be, but that's not what we're going to talk about. But so like life experiences and things like that. But yeah, that's a little bit about the genesis of that.
Yeah, that's cool. And having taken the Thai cinema class, that's probably my favorite INST that I took, and I took a lot of INSTs. So, but it is. I think it's because I was able to see. It's nice to learn something from somebody who's really passionate about a subject, which they try to do at Otterbein. But you also have to have a teacher who's able to like connect it to a broad experience or like broad background of students who are coming from lots of different areas. So like some of the classes that I've taken, I think some professors are better than others at like developing the love of what you're studying. Especially to it can be hard at a school like Otterbein where some students are focused on like I was a nursing major. I think a lot of nursing majors just immediately discount. They're like, sure, I just need to get through this class. But there is like a lot to be learned through taking classes on like film and other things. I wish I could have taken only at film classes as the classes that were, but of course you have to be a little bit more well-rounded than that. But because that same semester I also took a history and film class, which was an honors class, and that was also very good. And we just sat and watched movies every Monday night, and it, wrote 3 essays, and that was also a really good class. So
the real question is, what grade did you get in his class?
I did get an A. Okay, good.
Yes. Well, so the I get a lot of nursing students in that class. And I think, I don't know if it's the schedule or, I think there's a good reputation for a lot of people that enroll in the class have heard about it from a roommate or someone else on the baseball team or, but a lot of it is just, not to get down a pedagogical track here, is just doing the work. I set it up to where if you do the little reading, so you have a little context for the movie that might be a challenging film, and then you watch the film and we talk about it, recap it, or write about it in some way, you'll get something out of it. And nursing students are used to doing that, right? Like just doing the work and showing up. So they tend to get the most out of the class, even though it would seem to be the opposite course of study, nursing and then film studies or cultural studies, right? So, so I've enjoyed the nursing students for sure.
Yeah, it almost seems like I study so much science, so much health and medicine or whatever, and going into a film class or something is just not only a nice break or change of things. It's not a break; you're still doing work. I don't want to call it a break. That seems derogative, but no, it's a different experience than your other classes, right? So it feels like it's distinct from the other classes, and while the other classes might mix together and information might be mixed up between them. I took a theater class in undergrad, and that's one of my favorite classes that I had. The professor was awesome. I mean, we would watch one movie every week. It was theater, but we watched movies. That was how he connected to the students, and we would talk about it for like an hour and a half every single week, just about the movie, the themes, the plot, the characters. And I just thought about our podcast every time we were doing it, and I was like, man, I want to get him on our podcast. He said no, but but it worked out for Ben, so I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, and it's good that it finally worked out, because I really dropped the ball the first time I tried to have Professor Johnson on, because I think it was a pretty busy semester, and I was doing the classic trying to do too many things, and I just didn't communicate. But now that we're in this like small period of life where we're transitioning, we have...
Before you get married in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are you going to be able to watch as many movies as you used to?
I don't know that I'll be able to watch the same movies.
There'll be more of a mix of rom-coms in there as well.
Okay.
Because she loves rom-coms.
Yeah, she maybe won't want to watch movies like... I don't know, the movies that
she's not an Apocalypse Now type of girl.
European art house cinema.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Well, my wife is actually away for work, but I always make a list of things that I want to do and things I want to watch during that time period, because at night I can, I can finally get to that, obscure, neorealist Italian film that, And it, so I do catch up on those things. So keep that in mind. With like,
there's definitely still time. And plus, with doing the podcast, that's kind of my dedicated. Like, I'll at least get to watch like 4 movies a month.
Yeah,
because we're doing the podcast.
You just gotta be like, Emma, take that opportunity to take that work trip. Knocks him off my list. Yeah, don't feel bad.
But you can do rom-coms, I think.
Yeah,
I think you can do a set of true. I mean, there's some good ones out there. I mean,
there are some good ones.
Sure.
We just haven't found them yet.
Dig go farther back, get to the Criterion collection. I think, and go to the 50s or something.
Yeah.
1950s.
Yeah, you got to go back in time to watch the ones that withstood the test of time. That's what we always talk about. So, what led you to Blade Runner? How is Blade Runner like a formative film that you watched, or?
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking back and not exactly sure why I recommended, other than I really like it. I'm just and you must not have prompted me science fiction. This time you said you were doing science fiction.
Yeah.
Initially when you asked me, I don't know. Maybe I had just seen it and was reminded of how influential it was just in my worldview and people around me. It was a common cultural touch point, Oh, that's like Blade Runner, right? It's an important film, and so I think I'd recently seen it, and I thought, hey, let's talk about this, let's revisit this film. And you had previously, late 70s, you've done, I think maybe Deer Hunter and some other films from that rough period, so I thought, okay, that might be a good fit too. Just reminded like the performances, the music, the set. It's an amazing film. It's definitely like a top 10 for me. Apocalypse Now, The Big Lebowski, Blade Runner.
The classics.
That is a great set of movies to have in your top 10.
Yeah, trio. Yeah.
And before this, we did The Fifth Element, The Matrix, and RoboCop, and then this. Which RoboCop to this is a great transition.
And so we're doing them in no, we're not doing them quite in reverse order, because you had to start with The Matrix, and then go backwards. But I guess in a lot of ways, it feels like these movies kind of built up to The Matrix, being like the culmination of like combining these like philosophical thoughts to become a huge cultural moment as well. Although The Matrix probably owes a lot of that to the cool martial arts aspect of it too. But Blade Runner is like, talking about cult classics, I feel like it definitely kind of fits in that mold, because of its like weird history of, there was the theatrical cut and then the director's cut, and now they got the final cut, which I guess is just like they made the director's cut look nicer. So there was some studio versus director kind of drama with the movie. Obviously, Ridley Scott was coming off of doing Alien, which is probably one of the biggest sci-fi movies and horror movies, kind of a combination of both ever. And this was right after Star Wars, so there was also like rush to like, we got to make sci-fi now because of the moment, and that worked well for some people, and bad, like if we think of David Lynch's Dune, tried to really rush that out. That didn't go very well.
Well, speaking of which, Ridley Scott was supposed to make that, and then he left the project, and that's why they hired David Lynch.
Interesting.
So
there's a lot
Dune
of...
fell so that Blade Runner could fly.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and of course, this movie is based off of Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which I have not read, but I think my brother's read, so I should have probably asked him if he had anything to say about it.
Your brother would definitely read a book like that.
Yeah, he would.
I read it, but after Blade Runner.
Right.
In college, it was like a book that I just read for fun. That used to happen more. You would get introduced to a film, and then you would go backwards and read the original, because you became interested in the world of whatever that thing was. But and of course the great story, or it's like a novella, right? So but yeah.
Well, would you like me to kind of give the plot synopsis? I found a great plot synopsis from this guy named Chris Rodley on Profiles, which is in a magazine called Freeze or Fries, something of the sort.
Oh, yeah. It's that's a British art journal.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
So I was reading through it, and I found a great synopsis for it. So is it Freeze or Fries? I don't know.
Freeze. I think it's like a sculpture, like a relief sculpture on a wall, I think is where this comes from. Yeah, anyway.
Well, it's from Freeze. Chris Rodley is what it is. So Rick Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, is an ex-Blade Runner, a detective specially trained to retire renegade replicants. A replicant is a lifelike android used as slave labor on other worlds where millions of people have fled due to the overpopulation and decay of Earth. 4 of the Tyrell Corporation's most sophisticated Nexus 6 replicants have killed a space shuttle crew and returned to Earth. Deckard is coerced into finding and retiring them, a task complicated by his falling in love with Tyrell's own beautiful replicant assistant Rachel, played by Sean Young, and by replicant leader Batty, played by Rutger Hauer, I think. Determined to meet his maker in an attempt to extend their pre-programmed 4-year lifespan. So that's kind of the setup for the plot. What actually happens in the plot, we can talk about. So
so it's this very a world that has gone kind of poorly, but there's like that aspect of like technology has gotten better, but also life has gotten worse, which is one of the things that I love about Blade Runner. So it created this like cyberpunk atmosphere. You got these like weird looking fashion people who are just walking around. LA, I think, is the center, and it's like very different. And actually, some of the architecture reminds me. Seems like The Fifth Element drew on it, because there's like the like advertising and stuff.
Yeah, the flying cars, the tall buildings, almost like there is no end. You can't see any end to the city. It's just darkness beyond that, because the city has become life. It's like the whole world is this. Yeah, living quarters. It's no longer adapted to humans, but humans have to adapt to it.
Yeah, so and it's like raining and dark all the time.
Always dark, always raining.
Always like torrentially downpouring. There's like a few movies that you can think of that are like the sort of atmosphere is just, it's torrentially downpouring at all times. I think Seven is another movie that also has that in it. So it just creates this like very dark atmosphere. Now I know the theatrical cut had voiceover.
Yes.
Which was, I heard it was bad. So, but that explained more of the background. So I think the thing about Blade Runner is it is a little bit difficult to follow, because you pretty much get the scroll at the start, and then it's like, okay, you got to figure it out. But as somebody who's watched a lot of movies, you probably agree, like sometimes the fun is in like, I don't understand what's going on right away, but I'm figuring it out as these like characters come together and like talk things out and like have tension and conflict and so forth. So maybe we should start. What do you think the central theme of Blade Runner is? I know there's probably like lots of different themes, but like the central kind of one that runs through the movie.
I would have to say, it's the philosophical question of maybe this is obvious or trite, but what does it mean to be human? I think it's such a good question for us. This is great timing with AI being on everyone's minds. What does it mean to be human? And the city, I think, is, you're asking for one overall. I'm adding a second one. Something about the city. I keep coming back to the idea of the city and our human or cyborg relationships to the city. Third thing, again, you only asked for one, but
there's too many. I get it. There's too many themes. There's not just one.
The Tyrell Corporation, I've seen the movie many times. After this last one, I was like, wait, I think there's only one corporation, running everything, right? Like that.
So it's like a corporate run, which we kind of see some aspects of now, with like there being lots of, or like a few big corporations that own a lot of things. But this is just one central one that's kind of like almost replaced the government in a sense.
Right. So that's like, Elon Musk's dream, right? If you said, hey, if you could just run the country and there would only be one corporation, he was going to say no.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a successful business.
Yeah, exactly. So, So I would think the human, that philosophical question. What are you thinking?
The city. I'm so happy you brought up the city.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I don't know if it's the central theme or not, and I don't think it is actually, but the city stuck out to me the most because I feel like this movie is also a play on modernism to its fullest. It's this idea that the central place of activity is the city, and the city was created out of this push for higher thinking, for creating a higher version of man, right? Man's own end is what he can think of, and man's achievements can be displayed in a city, and that's where the greatest ideas come from. That's where the smart people go. That's where the universities are. So this idea that man can achieve a higher end in the city, and then to see how big this city is, right? How great and vast this city is in this film, and then to see how much crime is going on. Like it's a play on the great founder, maybe the great founders of our country, the founders of our country, or the great people of the past, or the bad people of the past, who had this idea of a forward movement with America, or the forward movement of man with these visions that they had back then, taking it to its fullest conclusion and showing the downside effects of that, where there's lots of crime, there is no human connection, you don't feel like you're a human there. In fact, some of them are not humans.
Yeah.
And that the ultimate end is efficiency in production. You see that through the Tyrell Corporation. You see that through them making slaves by replicating people. I mean, these are real people that they replicate, give them short lifespans so that they're more of a product than a human, and then send them to another planet to just, be a means of production. So it shows that, like, the ends of modernism, which would be displayed in the city, in the corporations, and in the manufacturing and efficiency in production, taken to its logical conclusions, which is violence. That's what I thought.
And it's also interesting that the highest point of technology that is being reached for is the replication of humans. Mm-hmm. So it's the Nexus 6 replicants are practically this, the only way they're able to tell they're not human is through these the Voight-Kampff tests, and the fact that they program them so they don't have as much emotional intelligence on purpose, because it would decrease efficiency. That's essentially and they're almost making I guess there also might be this kind of point that for the company there probably is an underlying, they would rather have replicants than actual humans, because there's these aspects of us that make us human, emotions and stuff that get in the way of efficiency, right? So I don't think they ever explicitly say anything they're trying to replace humans with replicants, but you can almost kind of see it there. And of course, I haven't read too much into this, but there is this sort of mystery of is Deckard a replicant that people bring up a lot. I don't know how much. I couldn't tell from I've only seen the movie twice, so I don't know whether even viewing it more times would help seeing whether there's any hints as to whether Ridley Scott was thinking that or not. But that's also kind of an interesting, as he's his job is to kill replicants. It would be interesting. Has he ever looked in the mirror at himself? Because who would have the ability to do that with such efficiency and for it to not affect them other than another replicant, right? Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
For most humans it would be a difficult, I suppose you could get numbed to the idea of killing people. That's I think an idea that's presented in lots of different movies,
Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. but for most people it would be difficult to just be we're just going to assume all of these replicants that have escaped are bad, and it doesn't mean anything to kill them, especially when they look so much like a human, even if you think about it from the fact they're technology. So I don't know what I would say as far as the underlying theme. I think what you said about what does it mean to be human, and also what does it mean for technology to have memories and have associations with humans. And I think in 1982 that maybe was a thought that people would have still thought was very distant, but now it is starting to be maybe AI hasn't quite come about in the way that movies have said it will, but it's definitely now, it's coming. There's something that's going to happen, and there's going to be big shifts of the way the world works because of this technology. Mm-hmm. And so as there's more technology developed to act closer to humans, now you can there's different AIs you can text with that text you back kind of like human. You could still kind of tell now, but you assume it's just going to get better over time. So how will that affect the world, and what will it be like?
I like how you were talking about logical conclusions, late capitalists, or this, you use the term modernism. In this movie, he's kind of evidence of these, of like what the end state, the ideal end state is for these systems, I guess. And now I'm losing my thought about this. So it so relates to right now, we're worried about, hey, AI, it's going to take over that assembly line job. Okay. Yeah, it's going to probably, right? And then, that's where we're at right now. But it wants to keep going, right? This technology, it's not just going to stop there, right? So we get this glimpse, this very plausible glimpse of a conclusion of like it playing out fully. We've got one corporation, and we've got slaves, and like a manufacturing job is like nothing. That's not even part of the equation anymore. So the good science fiction films, this one for sure, showing a very extreme end of the spectrum of what things will look like. So it has a dramatic effect, obviously, for the viewer when things are extreme and things are apocalyptic, but it's just so plausible. Or anything by Philip K. Dick, and then of course the Blade Runner film. It's eerie, and I think and that's again coming back to why this film. It's so prescient right now, And you all doing a science fiction kind of cluster is, I think, perfect timing.
Yeah.
Well, because even you can see this in a lot of sci-fi movies, because The Matrix is essentially like a big corporation at some point took over the world, and then technology took over the corporation, and now technology is the company, essentially. Like, there is no human behind it. It's now become like the robots have rebelled and are essentially like they are now the company, but it was all caused by like the people who created the technology to be able to do that. And again, it's very extreme, but it serves as a warning, because I think in our modern world it feels like technology, there's never a question of whether technology should be expanded, and I think it's always been like this with technology. There's always been people decrying the next jump.
Of course.
That happens at every stage. And so it is kind of about how people decide to use the technology once it's made. But the only thing that could be different about this is how much autonomy you're giving, and how it would be difficult to restrict or have guidelines on things. And I guess even, with weapons technology now, we're at a similar point too. It's like we have extremely destructive weapons. You could easily like cause a lot of damage to the earth.
It's weird that the world could be destroyed at any moment.
Right.
Everything is like feels very fragile, but also there's these the global politics has become like a Cold War essentially between powers, and everything kind of feels like, it's nothing's going to happen, but everything could happen.
Right.
At the same time. So I guess, I don't know, like, do you think watching movies like Blade Runner, do you think that helps people to, I don't know, does it cause change to the trajectory? Is it just like, you're just watching basically a guaranteed outcome of the future? Like, do you think, like, thinking about technology, how it could be bad, because I often feel like people have these conversations, but nothing ever is done to actually implement, or it's not possible even. Like, there's too many people. If one country limits it, another country will be like, this is our opportunity to gain an advantage over everyone else. So then it becomes, if you don't keep up with, that was what the Cold War was. It was like, if we don't keep up with this technology, then we're, our enemies will have it. So it's I don't know exactly where I'm going with it, but I'm just saying, like, the amount of things you have to think about with all this stuff becomes pretty easily overwhelming.
Well, you asked, do you think that it's good for people to watch?
Yeah, do you
these
think
types of movies?
Should we like make?
Yes.
Should we have like high school classes that are just like
elementary school? No, I think I don't know about mandating.
No, well, maybe not mandating it.
I think it's important because I think it's good to know the dangers of not only current systems, but also current politics, current societies, economics that we live in. Even at a younger age, it's still good to kind of learn about these things and kind of know that some of the problems that you see in the world are because of some of these systems that are in place. Now, again, watching these movies doesn't solve the problem, right? But at least I guess it creates a conversation in some way, so that maybe the next generation, we can just put it on them and they can solve it. Or it can be us, Ben, or it can be anyone. I don't know.
Yeah, I like what you said about creating a conversation. And I think a good artist, a good filmmaker, is sort of part magician, part synthesizer. Someone that can take these aspects of culture, sponge it up, and then turn it into something with sound and something visual that can explain these theories or these phenomena. More than because we could read, a philosophical text that's this thick, translated from French,
Yeah.
Or we could talk about some of the same things through being open and watching a film like Blade Runner. The power on display, that's again very plausible, is, sort of a logical trajectory for these different systems is very disheartening. So there is that sense of we're just on a train going towards this. Mm-hmm. But I hope that there's on a daily level, our daily actions, our daily you're getting married, maybe you're going to raise a family, that's pretty important, how you bring people into the world, and the values and the philosophies that you debate as you're creating a family or existing in a community, a bigger family. And I think good art, a film like this helps those situations, or is conducive to kind of that a conversation, keeping conversations alive. But again, earlier I mentioned the extreme vision of the future, very plausible but very dark and extreme, is discouraging. Yes, right?
But you said a magician and a synthesizer. That's awesome, because although they're synthesizing these dark themes, there is still magic in this film. Mm-hmm. So it's still a fun experience, although the themes are dark.
Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah, it has a lot of classic film sort of beats with the romantic aspect of the movie, but little wrinkles with he's falling in love with a replicant, so that's a little different than most movies. Most movies, people, there's probably other movies now where people fall in love with robots, but that, or genetically modified,
or sea monsters Shape of Water,
or anything really, I guess. but
you could fall in love
that's
with
an
anything.
Interesting aspect. But I guess it behooves us, because of your background, to what technical aspects of this movie do you think really influenced cinema going forward? I know, just looking at it now, you can tell you're I know this seems like it was important, and especially this is a movie that you hear more about when you're in circles of people who are either big fans of movies or are pursuing filmmaking in some degree.
Right.
It's a little bit below the Star Wars, Matrix kind of level of sci-fi that's become very popular to all general audiences. So what about this movie keeps people coming back? The first time I heard about this was actually in an Arctic Monkeys song.
Well, there you go. That was part of their circle.
Ben will figure out anything. He'll figure out ways to bring music into the podcast any way possible.
Yeah. But
what's the lyric? What's the
I wrote it on my letterbox.
Of course. Did you write about it?
Yeah. No, I just copy and pasted that exact quote of it's from there. It's not even from a popular song.
That's what that was. I had no idea what you wrote was.
Yeah, he said, or I don't know. It's pretty long. It's don't you know an operation is a cheap date? What exactly have you been drinking these days? Jukebox in the corner, long hot summer. They got a film up on the wall, and it's dark enough to dance. What do you mean you've never seen Blade Runner?
Dark enough to dance.
Okay. Yeah. So the song's Star Treatment. It's from one of their. It's actually it's not, the album was actually kind of a weird album for Arctic Monkeys at the time. I enjoyed it, but I don't know what everyone thinks about it. That's probably not how most people are introduced to Blade Runner, though.
Sure.
But anyway, back to the what do you think that
Yeah, no more about music.
we're done with that, right? I just had to interject there. But like the technical aspects that really are revolutionary.
Yeah, so more of an umbrella thought is Ridley Scott's just vision as a director. And I just picture him being a real pain in the ass with his casting crew it's just to the T. I mean, there's such a specific vision, such a specific, the lighting, the sense of place. And we are immersed in this world. The best time to watch this movie is, at night in the dark, and you're just immersed in the world he's creating. It's through his vision. And we talked about the auteur theory. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you talk about this in the podcast.
We talk about auteur theory in the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, very much an auteur. So I mean that's sort of more of a general comment. The models. So everything is scale. Small models. In fact, that the Tyrrell pyramid is only a few feet high. So, and to this day, you watch that film and there's no gaffes, there's no laughter. I mean, this thing is convincing as a setting. Yeah. No?
Yeah.
Okay?
No, I never. I agree. I during the movie, I never once was like, this is a model. I never even thought about I was so immersed in the world that I didn't even think about, they probably used models because they didn't have the technology to not use models at the time. That never was a thought that crossed my mind.
Yeah, they fooled me.
Yeah, I mean it's ridiculous. And then shooting in such low light. Okay, they're shooting film,
right?
And film is not that, even the certain kind of film that you'd have access to is not that sensitive to light. So you're shooting in just like darkness. It's like a little flashlight light. So the things on a cinematography level that they were doing is just unprecedented. Being able to capture such low light scenes, but then have them be convincing. And then just the lighting design of, you've got the pyramid, but then the light sort of just drops off here, and that's what creates that convincing sort of, the rural world, suburban world no longer exists. It's like, this is it right here. So I would say the lighting design and those sets are just phenomenal, and you never get pulled out. So that's like kind of a term they use in at least like artsy filmmaking.
Yeah,
you don't want to, with a sound or an odd image or an odd edit or cut, to pull the viewer out of the world, because then they're like, that was notice the seam. It's supposed to be magic, and then you notice the seam, unless that's what you're trying to do, right? There's films that do that well too. But that never happens. There's no seam. There's a scene where there's a plant. I think the light hits the plant and then reflects on a photograph he's looking. I think it's of Rachel as a kid in the front stoop, and then you see like these leaves go over the photo. You know what I mean? Like rustling. It's like, wow. And because it's a moment of like nature and beauty and like kind of this natural light phenomena that happens.
I remember that.
And it's like, but it's in the middle of all this darkness. So like, it's kind of a small moment. I bet I missed that 10 times, and then I saw it the 11th time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But that attention to excellence and detail was just phenomenal for everyone. And the performances. Rutger Hauer,
Rutger Hauer, I thought was incredible performance.
He was like perfect, and, flawless.
Yeah, his performance kind of made me think of like, it was very like, it was almost overdone, but like it was on purpose that he was like really playing up this character, and that gets a kind of hard performance to pull off, I think, where you can like overact but it like fits with the movie. Especially when you have like Harrison Ford's performance was much more like muted, and like a lot of the other characters too, because they're like replicants. Like Rachel, she's not going to give like the most emotional. That was the interesting thing about like the character of Roy, is that even though he's a replicant, he's seemed to develop this like intelligence quickly.
Yes. In real time, it's
and he realizes like what the Tyrell Corporation has done to him, and this movie also gets very violent. Like that's one thing I was like, this movie, it's not afraid to like with him killing Tyrell. I was like, so very violent scene, which I mean, Ridley Scott has never shied away from, considering Alien and like and other things like that. But it does go to show you like, sometimes you need some. It really locks you into the movie when you see a moment like that too. You're like, this is how much this person has been hurt by this person, or how much he feels he has.
Oh, it was a great performance. It was heartbreaking in some parts as well.
Yes.
But the Rutger Hauer was named by the Dutch public as the best Dutch actor of the century.
Wow.
In 1999, and then he died 20 years later in 2019, which was the year that this film was set.
Interesting.
Oh wow, I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Such an interesting play of events, but great actor, great performance. I was curious why they made a lot of the replicants look so strange, and the people in this world look strange because it's a play on like, styles change. People like to express themselves, individuality. That's the only thing that we have power of in this society, at least. But his bleach blonde hair, I couldn't stop staring at it the entire film. I don't know what it was, but
also the character of J.F. Sebastian and all of the like weird creatures he's made, like that was something that I like forgot about from the first time I watched it, and it really like stuck out to me this time. I was like, it's just odd and just like unsettling. Some of the like beings, and then that scene where Deckard goes in to try to find, I think Pris, was her name, and she's like trying to blend in with all those other creatures because I kind of forget what J.F. Sebastian's background is, but somehow he's involved in the technology developed, which is how he's created all of these.
Yeah, he's the genetic designer for the Tyrell Corporation.
Yeah, so he's like genetically making all of these like weird beings. So he kind of feels like he is a parent of the replicants, or he feels like this like connection to them because of his involvement in designing them, and because I think he says they have his DNA, like his own DNA in it, in them. He's like, but I think they view Eldon Tyrell as more of like their father figure because he's like the big boss, or at least that's what Roy feels like, I think.
And then to meet his father and do what he did to him.
Yeah, right. Wow, that's a dark. Yeah, that's disturbing.
It's a very
that's
dark,
hard scene.
But it ends with Roy saving Deckard.
Yes.
Correct. So there's that like, I guess, realization that like he's gonna die either way, and this like, I don't know what it is exactly that causes him to do that.
It's so human, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like the ultimate, right? So because to let him fall would be a continuation of their oppositional relationship, right? I'm trying to defeat you or kill you. But to transcend that would be to then be like mega human and then like save him, right? And that's like his last act. So in some ways, and I don't know, this is more than meta, I think. I've been thinking about this in how Roy like outperforms Harrison Ford, or Rutger Hauer outperform. You know what I mean? Like he's able to like be humorous and campy. He's all of a sudden in his underwear running around in the rain. How did that? Wasn't he wearing clothes? And then all of a sudden he was in his underwear. They're like biker shorts, right? They're very like today looking, very modern.
Today looking.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It seems like
that's the one thing that they got right.
And obviously he knows his way around the building. He's punching a hole or his head through the wall instead of walking around it. He's going above and beyond to show his superiority, and then his performance is like you said, he shows this weird range of like he's cracking a joke, he's being over the top, but it doesn't take us out of the movie. It's somehow like he is just evolving into being able to do these really human things. Yeah. And it doesn't go to absurdity, I don't think.
Yeah, I didn't think so either.
Yeah, I mean, it almost felt like for a short moment in the film, he was the main character a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. Yeah, he had his moment. I mean, I was mostly on the building, the Bradbury building, which is also kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, right? The author. And there's a lot of symbolism really packed into this moment when Roy takes over as the main character. There's the dove. Is it a dove? Yeah. Or that he lets go.
Yes, I think it was a dove. I couldn't tell.
But the symbolism.
Yeah, exactly.
Letting this, and then he puts that nail through his hand. I mean,
lots of symbolism. But his main struggle was that he wanted to be human so badly. He knows that there's nothing he can do, and his 4-year lifespan will take over him. In the end. But I love that scene. I mean, you're just now making me realize that. You're right. He's tearing down the walls between his kind and humankind when he saves Rick, because he's saying, "I don't want to be the people that put me on those planets. I don't want to be the people who made me or gave me the short lifespan, or the genetic designers, or the Tyrell Corporation. I want to be different. I want to be human." And for him, to be human was to break down that wall. And I guess that was like the most satisfying his death could have been, just because, I mean. If he were to kill him, then he'd feel like he's just like the people that made him.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But, yeah, I think, what's his name? What's his first name?
Rutger Hauer.
Rutger Hauer.
Yeah.
Rutger Hauer steals the show for me. I actually think, and I could be wrong, I thought Harrison Ford's acting was a little bit lower than his standard. Just a little bit. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I guess you could think about whether that is just the way he was directed to be like his performance was directed to be, not like a performance. Because I was thinking about, we sometimes talk about, could anybody else have played the role? Like we talked about that with Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. And I was thinking about it for this, and I was like, somebody else probably could have played this. Like, I don't think it had to be now we think of it as Harrison Ford. It's so ingrained, but I think if like you were back in 1982, he wouldn't be the only person who could do it. Now, obviously, like, well, I guess we kind of saw Ryan Gosling's like take on being in the world of Blade Runner, like now in Blade Runner 2049. But I think some of it's like they didn't ask him to like go stretch beyond the limits of what he already knew how to do. They were like, we think you fit with this. They probably to some degree wrote the role for him. I think there was like aspects that he's not quite as maybe sarcastic, but he still is, like, he has that like kind of sarcastic edge that he has in a lot of movies too, which you have to think Ridley Scott was probably like, I know Harrison Ford is like that, so I'm like, when I'm writing this, I guess I didn't really look into like whether they were looking at other people at the time to do this, or whether it was like we always knew it was going to be Harrison Ford. But Roger Ebert initially gave this movie a 3, and then when he reviewed the final cut, he gave it a 4. So he cheated a little bit.
The lighting helped him, huh?
The lighting and the extra narration made it.
Was it the unicorn scene that they mixed up?
I guess giving it a 3 though on the initial. I mean, that's not a bad score for him.
That's great.
He's only rating out of 4, so
that's great.
Yeah.
Why did you pick the director's cut?
The director's cut. That is. Simple answer is what I had most recently seen in a few times in a row. So between the director's cut and the final cut, for me they're
basically the same.
It's the same. Okay, so but I guess it was the original with the voiceover.
Yeah.
So there was definitely a distinction between
the theatrical,
that and the theatrical release, if you're asking. So that narration was. I mean, I didn't like. Punch a hole through the wall because it was so terrible, like the critics did. But his character, like you're saying, is so subdued. He's an archetype of a detective. There's always the whiskey, and his dress, and he doesn't even have a hat. Even I don't know, but and he's in the car, like the police car, kind of. Right, he's got his car. So there's this archetype thing going on. But then if you watch that theatrical release, he's talking all the time. Do you know what I mean? So it's like...
So it does change the movie
It's counter. A lot. Like, you don't want to hear Harrison Ford... Like, he's good because he doesn't talk a lot. He's got his quips, his weird facial scrunches. You know what I'm talking about, right? And that's what makes him who he is. He doesn't give long monologues. Like, he's not like a... I don't think of him as like a classically trained, British style like actor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's weird. So that
it doesn't fit him either.
Weird because you hear his voice for hours.
And I'm sure it's also weird because a lot of the storytelling happens non-verbally in this film, through images, through facial expressions, through honestly action as well. So it would be odd I haven't seen the theatrical version, so it would be odd for me to watch it, but I want to watch it just so I can know. How did you get your hands on the director's cut? Do you have like a physical media DVD or?
I do. Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Because I was like, DVD. I don't think I've ever streamed.
Because you can't.
It
was so hard to find.
We have to buy it actually, because I think they just have basically replaced it on all streaming platforms with the final cut. That's how I had watched it, the final cut, because it was probably watching on like Hulu or something, and that's what they had on there. So I just watched that.
But luckily, we found the director's cut on one thing that I had, and we won't disclose what that was, but we found it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yes. So that's why I dropped you a note, and no alarm though, because the two are the same. I think then I could. Because I didn't want you to think that that you really had to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that there was like a huge distinction.
Yeah, it wouldn't change the discussion.
For some reason, I guess there was only 3. Like in my head, I was like, there was even more cuts of Blade Runner, maybe there are like rumored like cuts of that Ridley Scott has that haven't been released, but I think those are the 3 that exist. It is interesting. So they did consider a lot of people for the role of Deckard, including Gene Hackman, Sean Connery, Jack Nicholson, Paul Newman, Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Al Pacino, Burt Reynolds. So this could have gone a lot of different directions.
Imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger doing this.
So actually, when reading that list, you kind of I think I appreciate Harrison Ford's performance more, because Clint Eastwood could have maybe pulled it off, but a lot of those people seem like Al Pacino, it would have been weird in Blade Runner, like it just wouldn't have.
They could have done the gangster archetype, not the detective.
Yeah, they would have had to like change a lot of like foundational elements of the movie to fit how people. It is always interesting to think about. Actors are to some degree limited by who they are. Mm-hmm. Like you can't just plug in everyone. I mean, they try, but
That's a lot to think about, that list of names. Gene Hackman, maybe, but it would.
Not Paul Newman. I'm sorry.
Paul Newman. No.
Some of the people seem kind of.
It's hard to say, right? Because I'm like, no, Harrison Ford's the best, but we haven't seen them.
But you haven't seen it. How the movie would be made.
Keanu Reeves. Could he have?
I am a Blade Runner.
Yeah.
But really cool martial arts, so that would have been interesting.
Well, then, to be honest, Harrison Ford's character kind of gets beat up more than he beats up in this film.
That's a classic noir kind of thing, right? The like hero. You see it in Batman. Some be like
we saw it in Les Samurai.
The hero gets beat up.
Yeah,
like they're always like, and then at the end they finally rise to the occasion sometimes. But you're right. Les Samurai did have some aspect of like he was always getting chased and beat up and all of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting.
We relate. That helps us relate, I guess, to the protagonist.
The beat down protagonist.
Right.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. I wanted to know your guys' thoughts on the love story, if that added anything to the themes of the film or if it did not. I thought if it did add anything, it might have just been that seeing firsthand the treatment of replicants as less than human. But I don't know if it added anything else to the film. Prove me wrong. No, I'm just joking.
I often think like the romantic aspects of the movie, maybe as you watch more movies and you see more, like sometimes they're a little bit shoehorned in because it always feels like you have to have some sort of romantic connection in the movie. So probably like some audiences come in with an expectation that there will be some sort of romantic, but I think it is kind of interesting. Like I said, it grounds it to like, it's still a movie that's supposed to be entertaining, and it grounds it to that, and the fact that she's a replicant, and that he is, like, he knows that she has a short lifespan and all of this, but he still wants to like have a relationship with her.
That could also be evil, though. Maybe he only wants a short-term relationship.
Yeah, that's true. He knows this is great. I know I can.
He's like, I don't have to commit. I'm just thinking through these things.
Good point. But I don't think I've thought about it enough.
Yeah.
I think it's could have a deep feminist critique, which I won't give.
I was seeing
but
that.
Definitely could be be an interesting kind of conversation. And I'll tread lightly here, but a lot of it is. It's very brief. It doesn't take up a lot of the screen time, right? Or a lot of our energy. But there is just a brief complication where, she's a replicant, she's attractive, and you're implicated, I think, for a minute as a viewer, looking at an attractive robot. Let's face it, right? And you think oh wait, I just thought a robot was attractive. Granted, we understand it's a film, but I think there's that moment where you get implicated in this dynamic or this big philosophical question of what it means to be human. And so for me, there's that moment where, that I find her attractive. She's a robot, and I think, oh wait, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and also with some of the background of Pris's character, it does get into the sort of darker side of they could make AI robots who are essentially prostitutes. And so they will. Of course. And that's
it's dark, as you're saying.
Yeah. But and then it would take away that aspect that, and there's lots of ethical dilemmas, that everywhere with that. So, not to go too far on that, but I think it does. Yeah. It's the film does a good job of not spending too much time, but giving you planting this thought that oh, this is another bad thing that could potentially happen in the future that we should be maybe a little bit concerned about. Yeah. And doing that absolutely. In different aspects throughout the entire movie. Yeah.
Because at what point do you mistreat a replicant?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At what
exactly.
point?
Well, they're slaves, so it's
So can you just right? But their appearance and their behavior, even though it's 4 years, even if there's a tag and it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel comfortable taking a crowbar to a replicant on the street because I'm angry one day. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
There's this. Yeah. So that at what point is it real enough?
Yeah, and it shows that they can suffer.
Yeah.
So to create something that can suffer and then to make them suffer, I mean, that just sounds. I don't know, not great. I mean, at least from our perspective, I don't know. So it adds a layer to the film that I thought was great. Just adding this this is not just a black and white problem. This is a gray problem. I guess I can use the same analogy. There are replicants who will be mistreated, and there are replicants. Those replicants that are mistreated are actually humanoid in a way. It's showing the more human I can't talk human side of the replicants, so that he falls in love with her because he sees that humanity in her, and he actually wants to pursue her, even guarding her from her own mortality at some points. And I think it shows to the audience we're looking at this world through his lens, right? We're looking at it through Deckard's lens. So to see him see humanity in her helps us to see humanity in Roy later on as well. Just the idea that these replicants are not just robots that need to be destroyed, but they have some good sides to them as well. So, if that makes sense through my blabbering.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I was thinking about Roy. I mean, all of them, but we spend the most time with Roy, and he speaks the most about just wanting to live, wanting more time. He says, I think a couple times in the movie, and then we think of, speaking so broadly of society, and I mean, I don't think this is a stretch, but mental health and people struggling emotionally, struggling to find connection and meaning in their daily lives. And then we have a replicant that just wants to live and has discovered enough about being human. So there's this, disconnect and contrast there. I think that needs to be explored more. But that's one thing I thought about, is how there's a replicant that he just wants to keep going. Whereas I think a lot of people, understandably, are just having a hard time, with the life that they've been given. So.
As we move towards this future of this grand city that this place, that the movie takes place in, everybody becomes isolated. That's why everybody has different colored outfits and hair and shoes to express themselves, because they feel like the city. I mean, there's no expressivity in there. There's no connection. You're in your cubicle, you go there day and night, then you go into your capsule to sleep. I'm thinking of Japan. In Japan, they have cubicles and then go to capsules. I was watching a video on it. So like these sleeping capsules. Yeah. And they're stacked on, they go vertical because there's no space and overpopulation, and their solution to overpopulation is create replicants and then send them off world. So I'm just saying these inconsistencies. So.
Yeah. So with wrapping things up, what would be your final thoughts about Blade Runner?
Yeah, I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, which is like in some of the higher movies that I've ever watched. I want to watch the final cut. I haven't seen the final cut. I haven't seen the original, so I have a feeling that I'm going to watch those two, and then I'm going to rank them. And so it just gave me...
Have you seen Blade Runner 2049?
No, so I'm going to add that too. So I need to go... So this gave me motivation, at least, to pursue. Yeah. And does 2049 kind of go into these same themes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe in I haven't seen it in a while, and it's a very long and... Well, it's Denis Villeneuve. He loves just like spending time in the world. Mm-hmm. So,
which is hilarious.
But the
Dune connections to this movie are so great.
But Harrison Ford, is also in the movie again. So you see him again, and I think dives into maybe talking about some like the perspective with the technology having increased now to the point that it is now into the future with a little maybe different filmmaking style.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's good that we had this discussion pretending that 2049 didn't exist.
Yes.
Because, it would have changed everything, because I think it tries to answer some questions. And
I forgot.
It does.
I forget kind of even what I remember really liking how the movie looked, and that's basically what I remember.
And sounded. And I hope, did you get a chance to see it in the theater?
No, I didn't, unfortunately. Yeah. I actually probably watched it before the original Blade Runner, which was also probably a mistake, so I probably am just all messed up. That was a long time ago, though. It was in my early film watching days.
Hey, when 2079 comes out, we'll be right there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Use a 5-star system on this podcast?
Just on Letterboxd.
Okay.
Yeah, we used to use a much more complicated rating system. Now we just reference our Letterboxd.
We did a 10-point rating system.
So I've come up with this 3-star system, which nobody likes. That I never agree
with.
That
doesn't matter as long as it's what you like.
But it simplifies it. So 3, absolutely watch it. 2, if you have, if you got the time, watch it. If you don't ever see it, your life won't be rocked either way. And then 1 is probably not worth your time. Just like
I actually really appreciate that rating system
because that's for sharing movies. That's like the 3 seems like your system is for recommending movies. That's a great idea.
Yeah, because it is very helpful to be like, you should really prioritize watching this movie versus like, because there are movies that if I had never watched them, like, I would be fine, but there are movies that I'm like, they changed how I thought about movies, and like
that's a good way to put a label for a 3-star movie in my system. And I think it's a movie that we should continue to talk about, continue to watch, continue to recommend. I saw it in a film studies class also, so hopefully in academic and other realms, it's we continue to watch it and talk about it. And philosophize, because good films, good art, it just creates space for philosophical conversations, which sounds really intimidating, but whenever you find a group of people talking about a movie, that's what they're doing. They're talking about existential issues, what it means to be human in some way. So what a great thing to spark through movies. So
excellent. I just have one quick question. I know we're over time. One quick question. How was Ben's writing in your class? How did he do? I just want to know more about
Ben was great. And then, comments. I felt like the class was not going to be able to push you enough based on your passion, your interest. I could just tell from your comments. I'm like, oh, okay, this guy, he's got a passion for this, so that was one thought I had. And the writing was great. And you enjoyed it. You came in with some knowledge already, and so
you're probably the only professor that I met with to not really even to just connect with and not like actually like I may have like said I wanted to meet with you because I had questions about something I can't remember at the time, but I think I really just wanted to talk about movies and talk about the podcast. it is nice. Like, I feel like the ideal relationship between professors and students is that you can just meet with people, or like just meet and just kind of have conversations. And there's probably there has to be initiative on both aspects. Like, students have to take initiative to like try to form those relationships. It's not, but it is nice when I think it's made my experience better that there are professors like you out there that are like want to actually engage with the students. It doesn't feel, and I think you get that a little bit more at Otterbein just because people take jobs here knowing like it's going to be more, because there's no like grad school. It's not like Ohio State where it's like there's all this research and other things going on outside of just teaching. So, and I'm sure in the art department, you guys, it's a very collaborative environment between the students and the teachers. And so that's probably pretty neat.
That's absolutely my favorite part of the job too. Is just the relationships with students that you build, and then you know, with the smaller classes, smaller campus. But every semester, actually, I'm always open. I say, come talk to me, whatever, you know. And there are always a handful of students that take me up on just the meeting for no reason, basically, just to talk about movies. I mean, the class is the impetus, right? They're in the class, that's how they meet me. But then we just talk about movies. So it's interesting. There are a couple. And I think movie lovers, I mean, part of it is watching and then talking about it. And you just, you know, love to have those conversations. The last student I had was obsessed with Quentin Tarantino, and you know, and
that's
so,
we all.
You know, that's kind of that's the entry point, right?
Yeah, that's where I started too when I first started watching movies.
Everybody goes through that phase, but you can't unlove him. That's the thing. Like you really do stick with the movies throughout your whole time of learning about film. I'm sorry. What was your favorite country that you went to a film festival or gallery and presented your work?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question.
Sorry, Ben, I'm going overtime.
No,
I should apologize to you.
There is no overtime. We can go as long as we want.
So I did some art stuff in Sweden.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And you know, of course, the you know, if you're an endurance athlete, you're an outdoorsy person, you know, you like to ski. It's like daily life there. It's just ingrained into the culture. Everyone's wearing, you know, fleece and, you know, workout pants like to the office, and you know, literally running. I've seen a bunch of people, they were running to the office, you know, they have these mini backpacks and they just like were running the trail to their office. So
imagine how much healthier it would be here if there was more of a call. Of course, you know, it's kind of hard when it's not really like we live in a very walkable
our 5Ks are sponsored by McDonald's here.
Exactly. So I would recommend, you know, Scandinavia, like Sweden it was great. Beautiful place. So
wow. I'm just curious.
I
mean, it says you've been in galleries or film festivals in over 30 countries.
Yes. Yeah. The list is growing. So, but it's been great.
And what is your favorite work that you've produced? This is my last question.
The favorite thing I've made. I made a nonfiction or documentary called Low Season, and this was from 2018, I think, 2017. It's 16 minutes long, and it is a personal work. It's a documentary about my dad as a Vietnam War veteran, you know, recalling some stories. And through his travel, and then he became kind of a hippie and kind of a traveler, a free spirit, sort of after that time, because he experienced some, you know, the travel and some of the lessons learned from that. And then how he met my mom, and their sort of courtship, you know, and then her coming to the U.S. and her experiences, you know, in a new culture and in, you know, acclimating and integrating into new society and stuff. Because he was from a rural area, she's from an urban area, so there's just a lot of contrast and kind of just the interesting stories. So it was a series of interviews, kind of oral histories, and, you know, then tied into some archival footage, and then some stuff that I shot over in Thailand and then in rural parts of the U.S. So it's very kind of scenic. It takes in my interest in landscape, you know, photography and film too. So anyway, yeah.
Well, I mean, that explains your interest in, you know, Vietnam War movies.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
Explains your interest in like scenes in the city and kind of that contrast between the city and urban life. So interesting.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll be sure to check it out. 16 minutes. That's awesome.
I can log that on Letterboxd real quick. No,
so I'll send you the screener link if you want it.
Please do.
You can watch
Please do.
Yeah.
That That'd be awesome.
Great.
Well, I appreciate this so much.
Oh, I appreciate it too. This is
great.
I love talking about movies. And have you done an Apocalypse Now one?
No.
Because if you ever do, I've got someone in mind who like wrote a thesis on it. And he used to work at Otterbein actually.
Oh.
So,
well, now we'll do it just because of that.
Yeah. So that'll be an easy one. He likes to talk. So yeah, that'd be
great.
good.
Perfect.
Yeah, so let me know. Awesome.
Sounds
Thanks, guys.
good. All right. Great. Now we'll do the most professional thing that we do on the podcast, which is close the vault. So I'm going to make a sound that simulates closing a vault, and that'll end the episode.